Okay. Okay. I think we're back. We're here. This is some IU Sports Media online voodoo broadcast stuff. We're trying some different methodologies of getting online, and we got Matt Cohen with us. We tried Jared Rigdon earlier. It didn't quite work the way that we hoped that it would, but Matt, hopefully this one will work. We have no idea whether this is working until after the stream. We'll go check it out. But let's talk real quick about a couple of things here. First of all, IU drops out of both polls. Why?
So it's an interesting question. I got to pull up the AP poll back up in front of me here, but at least in this day and age, when you're 24 and you lose, you're probably going to fall out, especially when they put in an SEC team in Texas A&M. Virginia Tech's been playing well recently, so they hopped in. I don't think I'm too surprised about that. They were close the past 2 weeks. Appalachian State at 9-1. That's the one I have a harder time with. But
I mean, look, I realize we're new to this whole ranking thing, but Texas A&M, they get into the poll. They got into the poll because they beat South Carolina 30-6 in College Station, and their previous, like, the wins that they have on the season, the whole season, are Texas State, Lamar, Arkansas, Ole Miss, Mississippi State, Texas San Antonio, and now South Carolina. Like, what's rankable about any of that? You can make the argument that IU's schedule is similarly unrankable, but IU just covered on the road against the number 9 team, number 8. What is Penn State? They're
Penn State moved up to
they're 9th. So your own top 10 team gets covered at home, and it was a very close game. And it's like I don't understand the mentality here.
Yeah, I mean, I think it just has to do with the fact that Texas A&M is an SEC team. It's really, I think, as simple as that. They've probably played just equal schedules in terms of strength of schedule. I guess South Carolina might be a better win than anything Indiana has, but that's not really saying much because Indiana's best win is Nebraska right now.
Well, okay, fine. Let's take San Diego State, who's decidedly not an SEC team. They lose 2 weeks ago to Nevada, and then they turn around and barely beat by 10 a Fresno State team that's 4-6 on the season, and that gets them into the poll?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I guess the way that I've looked at this whole season is like the rankings are cool and everything, but it's not really. This was never the expectation for this team this season. I think it's just the fact they're 7-3 is so far exceeding expectations to begin with. That's the way I would look at it. Is this? Don't worry about it. It doesn't matter who they beat. It's Indiana football. It's never mattered who they beat. It's just about can they get to a bowl game? And they've done that to this point, and now you're exceeding expectations far beyond what anyone thought they were going to do.
So let's switch gears completely and talk a little bit about the soccer game, which, hey, the Big Ten finally put on television. It finally popped up 10 minutes in. They managed to tear themselves away from the live non-conference wrestling meet that they were carrying. Hoosiers taking on the Michigan Wolverines, and they're getting the favorite here, obviously. How important is this win for IU in terms of what they are looking as far as seeding in the NCAA tournament?
So, to my knowledge about this team, which obviously Jared's covered significantly more than I have, we actually left Jared at my house this morning. I'm back in Bloomington now. It's an 8 a.m. flight.
Is your mother aware that Jared has been left at your house? I mean, that's a cruel trick to play on your parents, isn't it?
So Jared took a flight on Thursday to get into to Baltimore. My parents picked him up at the airport. He then had all of Friday to himself because the rest of us football guys didn't get there till Friday night.
Right.
Then we were all Saturday, and he's had today with my parents too. So it's a little bit. I don't know. He probably replaced me at this point, which is probably smart on my parents' part anyway. But I mean, in terms of IU's actual seeding, to actually answer your question, it probably winning today would secure a top 8 seed. I don't know if they'll get into the top 4 to have that guaranteed regional hosting if they were to advance that far. The way that I've looked at this team from what I've been watching it, which is mostly from a fan perspective this season, is that I feel like I have just as much confidence they can get back to the College Cup as I am confident they could lose in the first round. They seem to be an incredibly inconsistent team, and it's just what team is going to show up on any given day. They should probably beat Michigan. They should probably win the Big Ten Devil for the second straight season. It's just that will get them probably a clinched top 8 seed, which gets them to potentially be hosting a regional if someone loses.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting because if you look at IU and their overall wins on the course of the season, they don't have a whole lot of top level wins. I think you could make an argument that the Penn State win or the Notre Dame draw are probably their best results on the season. The Michigan win from earlier is right up there, and this would obviously be an even better result. Because they would be doing it on a neutral field. You look around at the other teams that are out there and what their RPI setups are. I think it'd be really interesting if IU got a top 8 because I just don't see a lot of dominance among most of the teams that are out there. It feels like a pretty wide open field. Even teams that like Stanford, for instance, has lost twice and drawn 3 times. There's nobody, with the exception of Missouri State, who's a Missouri Valley team that's going in, I think, in the top 16 or even really the top 30 that hasn't lost yet so far this year. So it feels fairly wide open for IU. But I agree, young team, you don't know how they're going to react. They might end up being very good at this, and they might end up running into something they're not expecting in the first round.
Right. So, yeah, I think that's the way I look at it too. It's really a massive unknown because this team's good. Just can they put it together on any given day?
Right. So let's wrap up as I'm just messing around with our video stream here just to see. This is actually a really cool service that we're using. This is Lightstream from Google. Last thing, let me ask you this: as IU football heads into this week, any clues as far as Whop Phillier's status or were there any other injuries of note that IU suffered in that game versus Penn State yesterday that we need to know about?
Phillier's the big one. Devontae Love didn't play, but I don't think that's a massive notable injury because he wasn't going to play to begin with. He just wasn't dressed at all. Phillier's the big one. It looks like it's a concussion. I think that was quite obvious from watching it on TV. I don't think you need to be a doctor to figure out that was a concussion. The fact that wasn't targeting was weird in itself. So they didn't show this on TV because it cut the commercial, but the officials brought out the camera on the field and we're looking at we're like reviewing the play during the commercial, but they weren't ever reviewing for targeting. They were reviewing the fumble, was what the announcement was in the press box, which was very weird because it looked like targeting from watching it like once.
We talked about this on Crimson Cast earlier today. I saw some Penn State fans online arguing that it wasn't targeting, and I'm like, what planet are you on? Yeah. Like, really? Like, I mean, just look at. I was like, well, it wasn't the crown of the helmet. I was like, you have no clue what the definition of the crown of the helmet is. Then it was, yeah. I feel, and maybe this could be a little bit of Mandela effect. But I feel like I've been in a world where I've seen that call specifically reviewed for targeting on more than one occasion in the history of college football. And somehow here, it wasn't even considered. It fits right in with the fact you really, Matt, I hope that you got like a game program and like got an autograph from everybody there because you were in a place where you got to witness a perfect football game where Penn State somehow had 0 penalty yards for the entire 60 minutes. It really, the whole thing felt like it was in this weird alternate dimension that where only football for certain teams resides.
Yeah, it was definitely a weird case. I'm not one to sit here and say home cooking or anything, but it looked a little bit that way. I mean, every review seemed to go against IU, and what quite naturally fits the narrative of this program's history. I was joking in the press box after the fact, like I finally got to write my IU was close against the top 10 team that didn't pull off the upset story, which seems like every beat writer's gotten it right until this year. This was the first time it actually happened. Because Michigan State, they actually Michigan State turned out to be not as good as we thought they were, and B, that was a very different game because you could really see how far they progressed as a program. And I think yesterday, they showed they they're close. They're still really close. But and I wrote this. I kind of not to flex my own story, but I like the way that I wrote. I like the way that I had the line like it was the best season in the last 25 years, but the mistakes resembled the other 24, and it seemed very Indiana football in a lot of places. But then they also bounced back with Peyton Ramsey, which they don't typically do. So that was otherwise mistakes were so normal.
I will. Okay, I'm gonna snap back on you a little bit on this because. Sure. Yeah, I guess technically you're right. If IU makes every other mistake in the game but one, it's probably an overtime game, and I think IU maybe wins in that scenario because their offense was playing better. So I kind of reject the idea that this is just like the last 25 years in all these ways, because it's the idea that IU has a DNA that is just completely inescapable is a seductive idea. But I think as you see, it only holds up to scrutiny if you pick certain facts for the narrative and then leave others on the side. And I don't know. I mean, it's certainly, you did, congratulations, you got your close loss against a big opponent narrative. But I would argue, I'd have to go back and look at the S&P Plus numbers, but I don't think there were many games where IU has played a top 10 team on the road where they had a 70-some% win probability at the end of the game. Like, to me, that's a very different kind of loss than even the recent losses at Michigan or at Ohio State or places like that.
Yeah, no, I think that's a fair statement. I say that more so just because just the individual mistakes themselves were just very IU. But I think what made it different is the way that they actually responded to them, because they, after the fake punt that wasn't, because apparently it wasn't a fake, and Penn State scored, they're down by like 2, almost 3. It was like 2 scores at that point. And typically Indiana never comes back from that. But they basically did if Donovan Hale was able to make that touchdown catch, which he should have made. That's not IU at all. They don't typically respond from those mistakes. So that's, I think, what makes this year different, and what shows why this team is so much better than teams of years past, even without Lockbillier in the game for that whole stretch.
We're learning lots of things here on this live stream, not the least of which is you need to be on a more solid Wi-Fi connection than you're currently on. So we'll fix all of these things, but we wanted to try it out. I'm going to let Matt go. Matt, thank you for joining me on the show. I don't even know what show this is, but thanks for joining me nonetheless. We'll catch you folks later.
Thank you for having me.